The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Each flicker seemed to whisper, spinning tales of terror. Are they just stories? Or is there something more lurking beneath the surface of our reality? We huddled closer to the light, seeking comfort from the darkness. But the darkness has a way of seeping in. It whispers of things unseen, of ancient fears that linger in the corners of our minds. Horror myths. We grow up with them. They become ingrained in our psyches. But where does fiction end and reality begin? This question has haunted me for as long as I can remember. The unknown has always held a strange allure. As a child, I devoured tales of haunted houses, cursed objects, and creatures that lurked in the shadows. It wasn't just the adrenaline rush of a good scare. It was the possibility, the terrifying thrill that maybe, just maybe, these stories held a grain of truth. This fascination, this need to separate fact from fiction, has fueled countless hours of research, late-night investigations, and more than a few chilling encounters. My own journey into the heart of horror began in childhood. Our old Victorian house, with its creaking floorboards and whispering eaves, was the perfect breeding ground for nightmares. I remember lying awake at night, listening to the sounds of the house settling. Every groan, every rustle of leaves against my window sounded like approaching footsteps. One particular incident cemented my fascination with the supernatural. I was 10 years old, home alone. One stormy afternoon, the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. As I fumbled for a candle, I heard it, a soft, mournful cry coming from my grandmother's old room. The room had been locked since her death a year earlier. My heart pounded in my chest. I stood frozen, caught between the urge to run and the morbid curiosity that seemed to be woven into my DNA. That day I didn't dare to open the door, but the memory, the chilling sound of that cry stayed with me. It was a pivotal moment. I realized then that fear wasn't just about monsters under the bed. It was about the unknown, the things we couldn't explain, the shadows that danced at the edge of our perception. Mirrors. They've captivated and terrified us for centuries. Some cultures cover them after a death. Others refuse to hang them in their homes, believing they are portals to another realm. The myths surrounding mirrors are as varied as they are unsettling. One popular legend claims that if you stare into a mirror at midnight and chant Bloody Mary 3 times, you'll summon a vengeful spirit. Intrigued, I decided to test this myth myself. I found myself standing in a dimly lit bathroom, an antique mirror before me. The air was thick with anticipation. As I whispered the words, a shiver ran down my spine. The mirror remained unchanged, reflecting back my own fear-stricken face. But the experience left an indelible mark. It wasn't the fear of seeing a ghost. It was the realization that the power of suggestion, the weight of centuries of belief, could conjure fear from thin air. Stories of phantom hitchhikers are another staple in the annals of horror. These tales often involve a lone driver, a desolate stretch of road, and a spectral passenger who disappears as quickly and mysteriously as they appeared. One such story, particularly prevalent in the American Southwest, is that of a young woman in a white dress. Legend has it that she met an untimely end on a particular stretch of highway and now roams the road searching for a ride she'll never take. Drawn by the eerie allure of this tale, I found myself on that very highway one moonless night. The wind howled through the canyons, creating an unsettling symphony. Every shadow, every flicker in my rearview mirror sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. While I didn't encounter the spectral hitchhiker, the experience was far from uneventful. As I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of an unseen presence in the car with me. The isolation, the darkness, and the weight of the legend itself were enough to create a palpable sense of dread. Whispers from the cradle, the curse of haunted dolls. Dolls. They're meant to be symbols of innocence and childhood. But what happens when these childhood companions become vessels for something more sinister? Haunted dolls occupy a particularly creepy corner of the horror landscape. From Robert the Doll, whose alleged antics include moving objects and changing facial expressions, to Annabelle, the Raggedy Ann doll said to be possessed by a demonic entity, these stories tap into our primal fear of the inanimate coming to life. My own investigation into the world of haunted dolls led me to a small antique shop on the outskirts of New Orleans. The air was heavy with the scent of incense and old things. As I browsed the dusty shelves, my gaze fell upon a porcelain doll. Its once bright blue eyes now faded and vacant. The shopkeeper, a wizened old woman with knowing eyes, told me the doll's story. It had belonged to a young girl who died tragically, and ever since, the doll had been plagued by misfortune. Whether it was the doll itself or the power of suggestion, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease as I left the shop. The doll's vacant stare burned into my memory. The ringing dread when phones become harbingers. In our digital age, technology has become so intertwined with our lives that it's no surprise that it has also become a source of modern horror myths. One such myth revolves around cursed phone numbers. These numbers, often shared through whispered warnings and internet forums, are said to bring misfortune, illness, or even death to those who dare to dial them. While the idea of a cursed phone number may seem far-fetched, the anxiety associated with receiving a call from an unknown number is a very real phenomenon. It's the fear of the unknown, the dread of what might be waiting on the other end of the line. Is it a wrong number, a telemarketer, or something more sinister? This unease is amplified when the number is associated with a specific legend or curse. Echoes in the dark, unraveling the threads. As I delved deeper into the world of horror myths, I began to notice recurring themes. Many of these stories, despite originating from different cultures and time periods, shared common elements: mirrors as portals, objects imbued with malevolent spirits, and the restless dead seeking solace or revenge. These shared threads suggest a deeper connection, a universal language of fear that transcends time and geography. Are these similarities merely coincidences? Or do they point to something more profound, a shared human experience that taps into our deepest fears and anxieties? Perhaps these myths serve as a cultural reflection of our own mortality, our anxieties about the unknown, and our inherent fear of the dark. The roots of fear history's grip on horror. To understand horror myths, we must also examine the historical context in which they arose. Many of these tales are rooted in real-life tragedies, unexplained phenomena, and the social anxieties of their time. The Black Death, for example, with its gruesome symptoms and devastating mortality rate, gave rise to countless stories of plague doctors, spectral horsemen, and the walking dead. Similarly, the Salem witch trials, fueled by fear, paranoia, and religious extremism, continue to haunt our collective imagination with images of witches, demons, and the supernatural. By understanding the historical context of these myths, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the power they hold and the anxieties they reflect. The power of belief where reality blurs. The line between fact and fiction becomes particularly blurry when dealing with personal accounts and eyewitness testimonies. Belief is a powerful force, and often what we believe can influence what we see and hear. The placebo effect, for example, demonstrates how our brains can convince our bodies of something that isn't objectively true. Could the same principle apply to our experiences with the supernatural? If we believe a house is haunted, are we more likely to interpret every creak and groan as evidence of a ghostly presence? While it's easy to dismiss such accounts as overactive imaginations or outright fabrications, the sheer volume and emotional intensity of these stories warrant further examination. Embracing the shadows, a dance with the unknown. After years of investigating horror myths, I've come to realize that the most terrifying aspect of these stories is not necessarily their validity, but rather the questions they raise about our own perception and the nature of reality itself. What if the things we dismiss as mere superstition hold a grain of truth? What if the shadows that dance at the edge of our vision are more than just figments of our imagination? These are unsettling questions, but they are also what make the exploration of horror myths so compelling. It's a journey into the unknown, a dance with the shadows that reside within us all. The final echo fear's lingering embrace. The fire has burned low now, the shadows stretching long and thin. But the stories linger, echoing in the stillness. Whether we choose to believe in them or not, horror myths serve as a powerful reminder of the enduring human fascination with the unknown. They tap into our primal fears, our anxieties about the things we don't understand, and the fragility of our own existence. Perhaps in the end, the true horror lies not in the myths themselves, but in our own willingness to embrace the darkness, to confront the shadows that lurk within and around us. For it is in those shadows where fear and fascination collide that we truly discover the power and the terror of the human imagination.